Permission to address the jury.
Permission granted.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. As you may remember, my name is Grady Closing. When making your decision today, I would like you to remember how the fate of a young teacher, Dalton Fisher, lies at stake here. Because Pat Reynolds and Avery Harris knowingly put themselves in danger, and Pat got hurt, Dalton Fisher may have his career permanently changed, if not ruined. And I would like to thank you, jury members, for taking on the responsibility of making this very important decision. During the proceedings of this case, I ask that you remember that, as the judge will explain, the plaintiff bears the burden of proof in proving negligence. This means that they must prove negligence by preponderance of the evidence. In other words, it must be 51% or more likely that we are negligent in order for you to return a verdict in favor of the plaintiff. The plaintiff's story that they will use to prove this is that Pat was suffering a dizzy spell on the night of the incident. The plaintiff claims that at 11:25 p.m. on the night of September 27th, Pat and Avery went to Fisher's room and Fisher didn't answer the door, leading Pat and Avery to have to sneak out of the hotel to get food, as hunger causes Pat's dizzy spells. While out, Pat climbs and falls off of a wall, and this fall injures Pat and he falls into a coma. Ladies and gentlemen, that story, it's a compelling one, but it is not the full story. Ladies and gentlemen, as the schedule showed, Pat and his roommate Avery were given 2 hours from 5 to 7 p.m. to eat dinner. They could have eaten 3.5 hours before Avery testified Pat got hungry. Sure, plaintiff may argue that they didn't like the food, but 2 hours is plenty of time to get more food if you didn't like it the first time. And even if it wasn't enough time, the schedule shows that dinner was an on-your-own portion of the trip, meaning that Pat and Avery got to choose where they ate. On top of that, Fisher testified that Pat and Avery never told him that they were hungry after dinner. So is it really justifiable to punish Fisher because Pat and Avery didn't like the food that they decided to get, then didn't go get more food, and didn't even tell Fisher that they didn't like it? The answer is no, it is not justifiable. After dinner, at 11:25, Pat claims to be hungry and decides to go to Fisher's room to tell him that he is hungry, which I have already established is not Fisher's fault. Ladies and gentlemen, please think back to the map of the floor of the hotel that Fisher, Pat, and Avery were staying on. Let me say it again. Ladies and gentlemen, please think back to the map of the floor of the hotel that Fisher, Pat, and Avery were staying on that was shown to you. This map was introduced as Exhibit 5. Remember that Fisher was in room 837, and there were vending machines just to the left of room 837. This means that if Pat truly went to Fisher's room, then he would have had to walk by those machines twice, giving him more opportunities to get food. But think back now to the map of the city of Metropolitan that was introduced as Exhibit 3. I ask that you members of the jury recognize that Pat and Avery had 2 food options, Hot Dog Heaven and Tony's Pizza, within 1 block of the hotel. But then, instead, they decided to walk 3 blocks away. Then, Pat made the decision to climb a wall and take a selfie, and because of that, he fell off of the wall, leading to him being in a coma. Not only that, but it is likely that Pat and Avery were not really out in search of food, but were really out trying to party. Think about this. If Pat really was in a serious medical situation and really needed food, why wouldn't he have called someone on the phone that was in the room? Also, if Pat truly was hungry and really needed food so quickly that he couldn't wait until Fisher's second bed check, that was going to happen only 30 minutes later, then why would he have replaced the tape that Fisher testified that he put on the door? If Pat was in as grave of a situation as he must have been to break curfew, then why would the tape have been on his mind? Instead, I believe that they planned to be out late at night, partying at Metropolitan University with Avery's cousin, Brucey, who, as it happens, belongs to a fraternity there. How do we know this? I ask again that you think back to the map of Metropolitan labeled as Exhibit 3. Notice how the route that Pat and Avery took just so happens to be the most direct route to Metropolitan University. Lastly, think of why Pat was on the wall. If Pat truly is so dizzy that he needs food immediately and can't wait for Fisher's second check at 12, then why would he get on a wall? Remember, Pat is supposedly too dizzy to think of vending machines for food, meaning that Pat either has very poor judgment or it really wasn't as dizzy as he claimed. And, as if it already didn't seem likely enough that Pat and Avery wanted to party, I ask that you jury members consider that the incident happened on September 27, 2013, Avery Harris's 18th birthday. This shows that Pat and Avery likely wanted to celebrate and likely thought, how better than with a party? Ladies and gentlemen, I trust that each and every one of you jury members has enough real-world experience to know that the odds are astronomical that Pat and Avery were really seeking food. But it is not my job to prove to you that Pat and Avery wanted to party and weren't out looking for food, as that isn't the case at hand here. I just hope that you will view this alternate theory as at least equally likely to that of the plaintiff. However, even if this theory isn't accurate, and Pat and Avery really did want food, the position that Pat was in that risked him falling off of the wall is a position that, unfortunately, he put himself in when he climbed the wall to take a selfie. Ladies and gentlemen, we all recognize that this was a tragic event, and everybody here feels terribly for Pat and his family. Just because we feel bad doesn't mean that Dalton Fisher and Smithville School District were negligent. When evaluating whether or not Fisher and Smithville School District were negligent, remember that for a ruling of negligence, Fisher and Smithville School District must have breached the standard of care of that duty, and they must have not taken steps that any reasonably prudent person would have taken, or they must have taken steps that any reasonably prudent person would not have taken. The plaintiff will argue that Fisher should have knocked and made sure that all the students were in their rooms for the second check. But, as Casey Damon testified, Dana Hughes, a person who plaintiff Peyton Reynolds testified he feels is very prudent, used the same methods. So that seems to be a very reasonable step taken. Also, even if there was this breach, which we do not concede there was, the plaintiff must prove to you that the breach was the proximate cause of the resulting damages. The plaintiff will argue that because Fisher didn't answer the door, Pat was forced to leave and fell off of the wall. But the truth is that Pat was the primary person to blame for his injuries. Pat knowingly broke curfew and put himself up on that wall for no good reason and hurt himself. And it simply wouldn't be just to punish Fisher and Smithville School District for Pat's mistakes. Lastly is the subject of safe harbor. Please remember that the main element of safe harbor that is disputed is that Smithville School District broke school policy regarding the ratio of students to chaperones. But I ask that you pay particularly close attention when the judge explains to you that one element of the safe harbor inference is that the school complies with all reasonable parent requests. I ask now that you remember Peyton Reynolds testifying that he called Jamison Manning and asked that the trip be continued with a ratio of 20 students to 1 chaperone. This means that because the plaintiff made this request, they must view it as reasonable. Another part of the inference is that the school provided adequate notice for any changes in policy. Please remember Dalton Fisher's testimony that Smithville School District and Dana Hughes held a parent-teacher meeting about the trip. And parents had the opportunity to be briefed about the changes. But if you disagree and feel that we are not entitled to the safe harbor inference, listen to the judge when they instruct you that just because we aren't entitled to the safe harbor inference doesn't mean that we are therefore negligent. I have explained to you the two disputed elements of negligence, and how Smithville School District and Thornton Fisher are not negligent. Thank you all one last time for taking time out of your busy schedules today, and thank you for making this important decision and taking it seriously.